Hey, what's up guys? Today we're going to talk about defenses to defamation. Now, what is a defense? A defense is basically a legal excuse, okay, to absolve you if you are sued for defamation. So today we are going to talk about the first defense that a defendant, the person being sued, can use if he is being sued for defamation. It's called justification. Justification essentially means to justify, to provide a basis for making the defamatory statement. Now, under defamation law, it is not the obligation of the plaintiff, plaintiff is the person suing, it is not the obligation of the plaintiff to prove that the statement is false. It is the obligation or the legal duty, the onus of proof for the defendant, the one who made the defamatory statement, to prove that the defamatory statement is true in substance and in fact. The defendant does not have to prove each and every word in the defamatory statement, but he only has to prove the substance, or in other words, the gist of it. So, for the defense of justification, if the defense is successfully raised, it is a complete defense. In other words, he is not liable to pay damages for making the defamatory statement. And the defense cannot be defeated by proof of malice. What this means is that if the defense of justification is successfully raised, even though the defendant was malicious, had ill intent, was spiteful in making it, it is irrelevant. As long as he can show that the facts are true, then he will not be liable when sued for defamation. The rationale for the defense of justification is that by telling the truth, the plaintiff's reputation is not lowered beyond the proper level, but merely brought down by it. So this is the plaintiff's reputation, and by telling the truth, the defendant is merely bringing down his reputation to the proper level, not below it. So, if the defamatory statement is that the plaintiff committed a crime, then the plaintiff has to prove that the plaintiff was in fact convicted of a crime. For example, he can use records or conviction records or court records or whatever. So, if the defamatory statement does not imply that the plaintiff committed a crime, but merely implies that the plaintiff is under suspicion of a crime, then the defendant must show that the plaintiff acted in a manner that would cause a reasonable person to be suspicious. This was laid out in the English case of Shah and Standard Chartered Bank. When relying on the defense of justification, the defendant can rely on facts existing at the time the defamatory statement was published. This was a time, let's say the 1st of July, that the defamatory statement was published. So he can rely on facts occurring before 1st of July to prove that the statement was true. Even if he did not know of these facts which existed before 1st of July. This was laid down in the case of Unko K. Benedict and Zim Integrated Shipping Services Limited. But the defendant cannot rely on facts occurring after publication. That means facts that occurred after 1st of July when the defamatory statement was published. He cannot rely on facts that occurred after this for his defense of justification. The facts relied on for the defense of justification must relate to a specific charge, and evidence of other unrelated conduct cannot justify a defamatory statement. So, for example, if the defamatory statement was that Peter is a womanizer and a thief, okay? The defendant, if he wants to rely on justification, has to provide evidence that Peter is both a womanizer and a thief. He cannot just provide evidence for one of the charges. In the English case of Bookbinder and Tabit, The defamatory statement was that the plaintiff squandered £50,000 of public money on stationery, and the defendant tried to provide evidence of the plaintiff squandering money for other purposes. Now, since the evidence was not related to this specific charge that he squandered £50,000 to buy stationery, the defendant merely showed evidence that the plaintiff squandered money for other things. It was held that the defendant in this instance could not rely on the defense of justification. The exception to what I just said, that the evidence has to support each of the charge, the exception to that is the common sting exception. So, a defamatory statement can imply that the plaintiff is promiscuous, and the defamatory statement can also contain an allegation of a specific extramarital affair. So, using this example, the defendant can provide evidence to show that the plaintiff was promiscuous, even though he is not required to prove evidence for a specific extramarital affair, although he is not required to provide specific evidence of a specific extramarital affair. In the English case of S&K Holdings Limited, Lord Denning reviewed the defamatory statements and stated that the allegations were not severable, that means cannot be cut into pieces, and the sting of the defamatory statement lay in the totality of the allegations. This approach by Lord Denning was followed by the Singapore High Court in A&B and A&F. The Singapore Court in the case of A&B and A&F held that whether the defamatory statement contains common sting or separate and distinct allegations is a question of fact. That means you have to look at the specific factual circumstances. The court in A&B and A&F involved a head of department at a school who was a plaintiff, and the defendant was a guardian, one of those guardians who took in overseas students and took care of them. And the guardian wrote a blog article on the internet which alleged that the plaintiff, the head of department, demanded bribes of $3,000 from guardians or tutors in return for guaranteeing a place in the school where the plaintiff worked at. The article also made reference that the plaintiff was sacked. So the court in that case held that there was a common sting, and the common sting was that the plaintiff had acted improperly and was sacked because she acted improperly by accepting bribes. It is important to note that the defense of justification is not available for a defendant who is repeating a defamatory statement made by another person. In the English case of Roberts and Gable, a newspaper published defamatory statements of the defendant based on the contents of an affidavit. An affidavit is a sworn statement that is submitted to court as part of court proceedings. So somebody made allegations in a court document, and the newspaper repeated the allegations of the court documents based on the fact that it was a sworn statement. And it was held by the court that the newspaper still was required to prove that the allegations contained in the affidavit were true. So thanks for watching this video on the defense of justification.